the heat wave. Well, it just hasn't stopped the whole summer.
Yeah.
And of course, we get no rain in summer, so occasionally it gets, a week of heat, and then there's cloud for a few days, and that brings the temperature down for a while.
Yeah.
And have you had any more floods?
No, it's been a few showers every now and again, but nothing much. But just sort of hot and humid sort of weather.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to?
Yeah, nothing exciting, particularly working every day, and yeah, so it keeps me busy for I guess a full half day, but I sometimes stretch the half day over a whole day.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
So are you enjoying it?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm still enjoying it. And I enjoy the business side of it. The more I can help with develop his business, the more I enjoy it.
And he's doing okay?
No, he's not. He's struggling at the moment since December, because some clients left him in December, and he hasn't been able to make them up. But I think what I like about it is that somehow, very naturally, I'm able to offer suggestions that he didn't think of. When you're a business owner, you just can't be everything to everybody.
No.
So you've usually got one or two strengths.
Yeah. And I think it gets magnified that when you get under pressure, your ability to think a bit laterally and creatively tends to diminish too, I think, doesn't it? So.
Yeah, it does. And particularly in this day and age, Don, where there is just so much development going on.
Yeah.
Particularly from technology, I'm referring to. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, there's also other things like agriculture, but from a technology point of view, things are moving, and I enjoy sort of keeping it. I dare not say ahead of the game, but trying to keep up with the game. Okay, just the general knowledge of it and so on, and so that gives me particularly. I've just been given 2 more classes, not 2 more. Get set up, dropped me a long time ago, and then they sent me an email and said, would like to do 2 classes. Okay, I said, sure, I enjoy that, but as long as I choose what they are. So I chose exploring outer space and the development of AI. Because I am keeping abreast of both of those anyway.
Yeah.
Having just finished an Elon Musk book. So yeah, I'm looking forward to staying there. What about you and your work?
Yeah, I'm a bit over it at the moment, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I sort of been going through a phase in the last week or two where I'm just sort of questioning, whether I should be doing this anymore, and I'm not sure what I should be doing, and just that sort of stuff which crops up. And ironically, it was around the new moon, which sort of amplifies things a bit. So
the new what?
New moon.
Okay.
Yeah. So but I'm just not sure. So I've just sort of been reflecting on that a bit. So, but then you sort of ask yourself, well, if not this, then what? So.
And does it have to be a what? I mean, do you have to work, or have you got enough money to retire?
No, I think it's important to keep active and be involved. I mean, so I don't know yet. I'm just sort of, I think too, like, as I've gone through and sort of nearing the tail end of, that book, and I've sort of been enjoying the whole process of, like getting ISBN numbers and, and every book that's published has to be lodged with the Australian National Library, and just all of those sorts of different elements, and designing a book cover, and I've sort of been enjoying that. And I've sort of had a bit of a tap on the shoulder to, do another one. So I might do that too. I really enjoyed this whole process, actually.
Okay.
And not only in the context of, like writing the book and the creative process, but I just found it a really healthy personal process as well.
What feel that it was moving you forward spiritually?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just like some days you'd be writing stuff and then you'd sort of sit there and look at it and think, my goodness, where did that come from? So yeah. And I think it just sort of helped me process a few things along the way and that as well. So
okay. So that might well be, but do you want to first, before you start another one, do you want to get the other one sort of on the bookshelf and out there?
I don't think one's dependent on the other. I mean, this sort of tail end processes, because I've decided just at this stage anyway, just to self-publish. Yeah, I mean, if you went out there and hit the streets and talked to publishers and stuff like that, I think that would be a lengthy sort of process.
Yeah.
And perhaps not very rewarding.
One of the having self-published myself, the things that I never had, basically the time, first of all, and then the money. One of the most important things is to go around and give talks. Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very popular, and so you basically go to bookstores and they arrange for an audience for you. They sell your book, so that's how they benefit, and it's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
But I never got to do that. Certain reasons, and so yeah, mine sort of crashed all the way through in the middle. I never, had all things planned, but none of the plans came to fruition, and I left the country, and now according to my visa, I'm not allowed to go, and I've got a suitcase full of printed books. I brought it with me. The only books I brought with me were, besides my Logos books, was a case full of these, because I thought, well, this is the beginning of process, and now I'm still sitting with them. I'm not allowed to do anything of any economic nature with Australians or in Australia. I can do.
Isn't that bizarre? Isn't that just stupid? But anyway.
Yeah, it is what it is, and Sue's managed to get around it now because she's they're in dire needs of teachers, so then they make exceptions. And, but they're not in dire need of 73-year-old copywriters. Yeah. Yeah. Sadly,
it's a strange old world.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that sort of is sort of quite strong for me at the moment, so I think I'll continue to explore that. But yeah, I'm just sort of a bit reflective, a bit burnt out too, I suppose, or just tired from working. So I'm going to take a few weeks off, towards the end of this month, and just, forget about work for a while.
And can you not arrange to work less frequently or fewer days, but still stay on?
Yeah, well, that might be an option. That might be an option, but I just need to sort of get clear in my own mind what it is, that I'd like to do. It's not a case of what I can do. It's a case of what do I actually want to do. I mean, I've had a couple of people whose opinions I respect, said to me, or one of them in particular said to me rather bluntly, like, okay, you've had your sabbatical, now get back in and do some real work. So, but I don't think I could stomach the corporate world again. I really don't. But anyway.
You've done that, have you?
Well, I think so, but I just sort of find a lot of how it operates is just so inauthentic, It's just.
But Don, that's an interesting thought, because with your background, which then talks about your experience as well, what would the environment have to be to suddenly make that experience and that background come again in an aha moment? And I can answer that for you, because I know what my answer would be. Okay, and the answer is, if you found a non-consumeristic, viable, expanding business that wanted senior management, that would be ideal. Because what gets you and I down is the consumeristic side of things.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. And there's just, there's so much more talking about the new world and what it's going to look like. A lot more than when we started years ago talking about it, I mean, we were the very first ones, I think.
Well, I think that's one thing that the AI revolution seems to be doing at the moment, doesn't it? And you'd have to sort of wonder that if you were like a marketer or something like that, you would have to be looking at these developments, quite concerned, I would have thought, So.
Yeah. So I think that would really be an interesting road, and what your friend that you respect has said, makes sense when you cast it like that. Okay.
Yeah, but I think the other side of it too is that when you look at like the AI thing, I mean, we've spoken on and off a bit about it for a little while now, and I watched a video podcast on the weekend there, where they were talking about a guy was getting the AI to design furniture pieces, and there was a lot of debate about, well, does that make sense to do that or does it not? And the experiment that he ran, it's one thing to have this design produced, but then to go and build it in a physical sense was a completely different issue altogether. And I guess part of that nuance is that AI doesn't have human limitations. So like if you use the furniture design example, like I know myself that when I'm designing a piece of furniture, always uppermost in my mind is like, well, what sort of joinery is going to work here, and how would this come together, and how would you build it, through that design process. Where AI doesn't think like that, it doesn't plan like that. It comes at it from a completely different perspective, and the issue of can this be built doesn't seem to figure in its cognitive processes.
But I'm sure it must take into consideration in its structure the weight that let's say, a chair is going to hold. Yeah, so I'm not sure that, but if a human's going to take that design and make it, that could be different. Okay. But maybe a human's not going to. Maybe it's all AI. AI designed and AI created.
Could do. It's funny, I ran a little experiment myself, not about furniture, but just I asked, I think it was the one that you recommended to me, so Right Cream or Cream Right or whatever.
Yeah.
And I asked it to do a diagram of mastery for me.
Okay. You're thinking of the cover of your book.
Well, no, I was just sort of curious as to what it would come up with, like what would it look like, and I'll just show you.
I'd be very interested.
So can you see that?
Yes, very clearly. Very colourful, eh?
That's what it came up with. I'm not sure what it is.
Oh, wow, okay.
Very sort of night sky or astronomy type focused, isn't it? So
yeah.
And this little piece up here, I think it's a key. I think.
Yeah, it is a key.
Yeah. So yeah.
That is so interesting. Mastery. So
the fact that it's got four quadrants there, and yeah.
But and it's also touching on possibly another quadrant. And
over here,
yeah. And then around the side, there's definitely energy and energy making formations.
But anyway, I just thought you'd be interested in that. So
here's your book cover, man. Everybody will ponder it.
No, well, it's not my book cover, but anyway. But actually, I should see if I can show you one that I haven't sort of settled on it yet, but one that I'm sort of thinking of doing. Let's see if I can find it now. There it goes.
Okay, it is going to take as long as it takes. Okay. Yeah, and arch.
Yeah, well, that's the Japanese torii gate. So that's sort of the old idea of gates, that was sort of in there.
Okay, yeah. Third chapter of yours, yeah.
I don't know. Thinking about it.
It's very attractive, yeah.
Anyway, time will tell. Yeah, so yeah.
If you take that gate, and instead of the lake and the island on the other side that you see in the distance, if it went into energy in the universe.
Yeah.
So you feel you're at crossroads, or it's just the full new moon?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know for you sort of had this similar feelings and that, like, but you were thinking about it in the terms of the ending of one cycle and the starting of a new cycle or a new, And I'm wondering whether that's a similar sort of thing that's happening here at the moment. I'm not sure. And I think part of that self-inquiry is like, I've had a few people sort of saying, not saying to me, but sort of posing the question to me is like, don't you think you've got more to offer than what you're doing at the moment? So.
And did you ask them more to offer who?
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing, So.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. I just need to just sit with it and see what emerges, I guess, if anything.
Yeah, I think a lot has moved for you, from the starting of the book recently, okay, and finishing it.
I did write some extra at the end too, by the way.
Okay.
So you'll have something to read when I send you a printed copy. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Even if it's the last couple of pages.
I look forward to that. Yeah. So you have been on the move, but I guess your consumeristic day-to-day job has in a way been, I suppose some will say, stabilizing you, but it also could be unstabilizing you.
Yeah, well, that's my sense of it too, So.
Yeah.
And it could also be distracting me, So.
Yeah, that's what I mean by unstabilizing. Yeah.
But anyway, sometimes it keeps me awake at night. Sometimes it doesn't.
No, it's interesting. I'm not sure that my cycle has actually, new cycle has started. Okay. I don't know. My sort of gut tells me it hasn't started. When I look back, maybe in a couple of years' time, it might have started in a more subtle way. I don't know. But the reason I say that is I some months ago I told you, and I did give up my weekly emails I was sending out to people, and my and my website, because the website was giving me trouble all the time, and then last week I had a strange week last week, but I sort of thought, no, man, what am I doing? That's just so stupid. I'm throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Okay. All I need to do is throw out the water. Okay. But the essence, which is the baby, which is my background and desire of wanting to deal with and help people with alternative health. Okay. Why throw that out as well? I mean, I've got an immense number of or amount of articles and content, and a lot of it's in a developing phase, and I'm still on an absolutely health kick, having gone into largely a predominantly plant-based diet. It carries on with the health, and I'm doing that for health. Why aren't I carrying on? Because there were a lot of people, and I found out more when I stopped, that people wrote and sort of mentioned how they were going to miss my emails and so on, and how it helped them with it. It was quite interesting to get that feedback when I sent everybody an email saying that I was stopping, and that was the last email. I got quite a interesting response. So last week I thought, Michael, it's whatever it is, a new phase might mean new health or new health, but you know, maybe it's arrived by this plant-based diet, because I was never plant-based before. Okay.
Maybe you should write a book.
Yeah.
But using a context a bit like I tried to write, not on how to and, you know, third person type thing, just your own personal experiences, you know. So,
you know, that may not be a bad idea, because, you know, the previous book, which we spoke about at the beginning of this conversation today, you know, it was called Cancer Holocaust, and with a subheading. And I look back on it now, and it was the wrong title. Okay, it was a title based on my frame of mind. I was angry. Okay, I was angry with how people are totally unnecessarily dying from cancer. Okay, and my attitude hasn't changed. But I've just got more evidence that that is the case. And but I want to find the healing side and not the anger side, not sort of pointing a finger at the pharmaceuticals, which what I was doing there.
But I think that potpourri of feelings and thoughts, no doubt, is actually how someone who is dealing with cancer actually feels. You know, they get angry, they get hopeful, they get despondent, they get all of these things, you know. And just your own personal experience about writing, you know, what you wrote, obviously took you through a whole range of different sort of emotions at the same time, you know. So.
Yeah. But I would probably, you know, if I did write a book again, and you sparked a thought in my mind, it would be about, you know, my experience of having a blocked artery and then having a stroke.
And I think that's a really important thing, because I think, you know, like just the things that you've shared with me about, you know, your own mindset is, you know, a lot of traditional medicine says, oh, you know, this can't be treated, you know, in this fashion. But, you know, you didn't accept that, you know. Sure, you had, you know, there were some elements which did resort to traditional medicine, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's not about either or. But I think all of that personal experience and your thoughts and, you know, is a really valuable information and a really important context that add a lot of texture to the whole idea of, you know, what does it mean to be healthy?
Yeah. It's like, you know, one of the key elements, and it's, as I think about it, it's interesting, because one of the key elements is saturated fats. Okay. Now, we won't go into the history in the back, because I can talk quite a lot about that. And but saturated fats are necessary in the body. Okay, the body can make them, but if you add too much through your mouth or other ways, you're going to land up with a stroke. Okay, you're going to land up with a heart attack, or you're going to land up certainly with a peripheral blocked artery. Okay, and that's still painful for me when I walk, fortunately. So, you know, things like saturated fat are good to bring to the notice, because why I found it interesting, one of Jan's customers lives in Asia, somewhere now in Hong Kong, and he's and Hong Kong. It's quite mind blowing. Is that you can only buy oils to do if you're a restaurant or a takeaway or something. You can only buy fats that are high in saturated fats, okay, because they're cheap, okay, and you can reuse them, okay. Very, very unhealthy. But a few years ago, the local government or the national government gave, I think, 6 years to do away or to do down to a minimal amount. They've got a small percentage of saturated fats by, I'm not sure, I think it's about 2024, I think, or something like that. Okay. And so he started a business, marketing, fats that are within the limit of what is required. And a great opportunity, a great guy. Well, not a great guy, I don't know him, but a great idea. And now, if something place like Hong Kong is, it makes you think about in Australia, which they're pretty tough on most things, but they somehow haven't got their head around saturated fats yet, because the fish and chip shops and the pizza shops and the McDonald's and all these places use oil that is very high in saturated fats. Because it's the cheapest way to go, okay, and particularly from vegetable oils, because vegetable oils are so highly refined, okay. And that the saturated fats, particularly, but besides the fact of the other, which everybody knows, are the bad fats, they're still mixed in that oil. So yeah, I could write a book and focus more on your blood.
Because the other thing too, which like there's been a lot happening in the last couple of weeks, I guess, from an awareness perspective, one of the contexts that I was looking at actually came from Sadhguru. I watched a video. It just came out of the blue, so it obviously must have been something I needed to hear. But a lot of my thinking had been around about self-expression, like the importance of being self-expressed. And in my case, through the craft and the work that I do and the values that I hold and things like that. And I was actually quite shaken up, after I watched, this video, because he specifically spoke to the issue about what's more important is cultivating a fullness of life or being self-expressed. Not that all that's obvious, it's about being self-expressed. And he said, no, that's not important at all.
Okay.
He said, cultivating this fullness of life, which goes beyond the body, so it goes into the ethereal elements and so on of life and what life means, life energy. He said those who focus on the full development of that life energy, automatically are expressed, but not expressed from a thinking conscious perspective. They're expressed because of this fullness of life energy that's bursting out of them.
Okay, go a bit more. Tell me how you interpret it.
Well, and he's sort of saying, well, therefore the priority should be, fully developing, this life energy within yourself and exploring the full depth and dimension of it. And yes, the body, but beyond the limits of the body and beyond the limits of the mind, and cultivating that. And like he was sort of saying, like, so one of the practices that he advocated to help do that related to the energy flow above your head. And he said at lower energy levels, the energy pattern above your head is a spiral, so a spiral up.
Yeah.
He says, but those who develop their life energies to such an extent that the spiral then turns into a figure eight, the infinity sign.
Okay.
And he said, so when an individual achieves that level of energy flow and achieves the sort of, the infinity type sign, he said the expression that flows from that is quite phenomenal and, in many respects, almost beyond description. And so I guess the nuance he was making is that if you try and use self-expression, which typically comes from either skillful use of the body or skillful use of the mind, he's saying it's far more limited and limiting than the juxtaposition in terms of coming from, a fully developed life energy as a being.
So how did the life energy become developed?
Well, he didn't touch on that specifically, but I think it's the soul. I think it's the development of the soul. Those little wisps of the divine which are at the edge of our consciousness, and through our spiritual practices, cultivating that soul.
Yeah.
I think that's what comes alive. It's some, because the other thing too, which I guess has been influencing my thinking, is I've just finished a book called what's it called? Renovation of the Heart.
Yeah.
So it struck a chord with me because I like renovating things.
Okay.
And the first thing that it was recommended to me, and the first thing that I did when I saw Renovation of the Heart, I thought, well, I've never thought of Renovation of the Heart as a project before.
Yeah.
And a lot of what's in here.
Write it down.
So it's a so the subtitle on like Renovation of the Heart, and then the subtitle is Putting on the Character of Christ.
Okay.
Now, a lot of what he talks about in there is my terminology, not his, is soul development. If that's a very clumsy way to say it, but
Okay.
cultivating the blossoming of the soul, and it's something that even a lot of generalization, but even a lot of maybe traditional Christian teachings probably don't spend much or any time on that. I suspect that Logos does in its own way, probably different language, but does in its own way. Just from the things that you've said to me about, the different planes and that. Well, I mean, that the vehicle for that to happen has to be the soul, doesn't it?
Sure.
Yeah. So for the soul to carry you into some of those other planes of existence is probably a different way of saying of developing your soul in such a way that it can carry you there, because it's the vehicle,
Yeah.
So I've been thinking a fair bit about that in many respects too. And I think all of those things together, just has me sort of questioning, like, what's the most important thing? Like, what do I need to be focusing on? What's the most important thing here? what's the number one priority? or what are the top 10 priorities or whatever, you know. So,
yeah, I understand that. And of course the fault with that approach or that thinking is it's thinking.
It's thinking, that's right. It's exactly right.
Who am I to say that?
No, it's the blinding obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's talk about developing ourselves. And let me think about that. It's like, no.
No. So interesting. Yeah. Just be. Yeah.
Well, just be. And I think it's kind of in that territory, you know, and it's not something, it's definitely from a tap on the shoulder. It's kind of in that territory where, you know, the other morning early, I was out there looking at this absolutely beautiful sunrise. And it was almost as if someone was standing beside me talking to me, said, you know, you need to write again. And the idea, which is abstract, but the idea you need to write about is being in the mood for autumn.
Yeah.
And it's like any of those sorts of things, you know, when you have that sort of revelation, it's like, well, what the hell does that mean? Well, it's like, we'll go and find out.
Yeah. 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 I don't know if you saw in the newspaper that portions of WA this past week saw the aurora in the southern.
I did hear that. Yeah.
Some magnificent pictures of it.
Did you see it or no?
No, I didn't know about it, first of all.
Yeah.
You know, I only read afterwards.
Same as down in Tasmania. Yeah, apparently looking out to the western sky, it was brilliant, you know, greens and...
Yeah, but very seldom you see it in Western Australia.
Yeah.
And they saw it as far as Perth. So, yeah, I'm sorry that I missed that. But you know, I've got no windows facing, well, anywhere that's going to allow me to see.
Yeah. Well, the trouble is too, with all of the light pollution too, you may not see it anyway, you know. But
yeah. Anyway. So,
it's fascinating, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
But I'd certainly encourage you to write, because I personally think you're a very talented writer. You know, so.
Thank you. You've certainly sparked a thought in my mind that I really hadn't thought about again. So, yeah, but it sort of hangs in true with the thoughts about bringing my website back and bringing all my stuff that I have written some way forward.
But I personally think that just the experience of doing that writing will be good for you anyway, just as a person, irrespective of what you do with it.
Yeah,
but just for your own well-being, it's quite a healing process in many respects, I think.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I'm actually doing less writing now than I ever have in the past, because I'm allowing AI to do the writing.
Well, I think there's an important thing around that, from what I can understand too, just, you know, based on my reading and very, very small experiments, is I think if you approach AI as a tool that's there to serve you, it will provide very different outputs than if you go to it, you know, as some sort of oracle, which is going to share wisdom with you, because it doesn't share wisdom.
Sure.
You know.
So that's interesting. Talk a little bit more about that, because I've been getting wisdom out of it up to now.
But I think the reason you've been getting the wisdom out of it is because of, well, you know, I mean, one of my favourite sayings is that, you know, no matter what your outlook on life is, it's always going to depend on the question that you're asking. You know, so if you're not asking the right questions, then the answers that you get, you know, will be meaningless or frustrating or, you know, shallow or whatever.
Yeah.
And you know, you've always been a master of knowing what questions to ask.
Okay. Yeah, I accept that. Yeah.
And I think it's a really powerful thing, Michael, and like even from a health perspective or whatever, you know, whatever perspective you want to put. I mean, I think there's a general fear. That's a generalisation, but I think there's a fear-based element to it that people avoid asking the hard questions.
Yeah.
Like if you were having a conversation with someone and all of a sudden they got upset about something, you know, like even just saying to them, so why are you so upset? You know, like, I mean, that's a very powerful and revealing question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than, well, what can I do to calm you down? You know? You know?
True.
And I think that, you know, some of, you know, it really, the questions really are grounded in, you know, like where is that question coming from? You know, that if you're asking the question of why, that's coming from a space of openness and inquiry.
Yeah.
Versus, oh, what can I do? Which is actually quite a limited outlook.
Yeah.
Because one of the assumptions underpinning that sort of question is, you know, how can I make this go away, or how can I fix it, or how can I? And it's not about that at all. You know, it's about, well, particularly from a health context, it's about getting to the nub of what's going on, and seeing it as it really is. Not about masking something with a pill or a tablet or hiding a symptom or whatever, you know. So.
Did you know the distance, or do you know the distance from the sun to Earth based on the size of the sun? How many suns are there between the sun and the Earth?
Well, I have heard this. It's a number that pops up in so many places. It's the same as between the moon and the Earth, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. I forget the number. Was it
108?
108. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. You start thinking, I mean, I don't, it would be interesting to ask the AI if they've got some background to where that comes from, or how significant that is. So I mean, I'm telling you this, I'm saying this because you were saying it's how you ask the question, to use the AI as a tool for writing a book. Yeah, so if it gets to that depth, that would be interesting.
Well, it depends on how you want to use it as a tool. I mean, a lot of that pure creative component which would flow through you, is something that's important to capture. But then maybe the AI can help you present those ideas.
Yeah. Because I know how to do. I'm using it on a daily basis the other way. Okay, so I'm using it for business, for my writing and so on. And
one of my sons is using it too. Like, he's just putting product descriptions on the website for spare parts for tractors.
Yeah.
And all he does is just plug in, So, a grease nipple for a 1970 Massey Ferguson tractor. Give me a product description and a sales pitch for it. Bang, there it is.
Yeah. The chat GPT is hesitant to talk specifically about companies and their products. Okay. I tried it today, in fact, and they always come up with, as a linguistic AI, I don't have an opinion about. But let me tell you some general terms.
Did you read the reports about the Microsoft version of it though?
Yeah, well, Microsoft they've taken the chat GPT and put it into Bing.
But they must have modified it, because the early version of it got quite aggressive.
Oh, they're modifying it all the time. Okay,
because like the AI would say to people, well, like when they do a follow-up question, it's like, well, what? Don't you believe me?
No, you don't get any of that now. No, that was a little while ago. Okay. Oh, it did. It was part of the development. But it's now part of Bing, and it's part of Edge, which are Microsoft's.
Yeah.
And
they've invested very heavily in it. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So,
yeah. No,
and there's so many players out there too, by the looks of it. It's not just one or two horse race. It's
it's not. The biggest other player is Google with Bard. BRD. Yeah. And there will be fierce competition eventually to see who's got the best search engine with their AI incorporated. But we'll see. But there are lots of others out there, and I don't know whose AI Write Cream uses. Maybe it's
there's a few. There's another one, Jasper, I think, is one as well.
Jasper.io. Yeah. That is also, it's a different. To me, it's not as good as Chat GPT.
It's an interesting space.
Yeah.
But one that shouldn't distract us either.
Distract us from what?
Well, I mean, just talking to my son the other day, and he's quite an intelligent, sort of outward-looking sort of person, and in the space of probably about 20 minutes, he used the phrase, "It's a bit scary, isn't it?" About 4 or 5 times. And I said, "What? Do you have an underpinning of fear there about it? What's that fear of? Fear of the unknown, or is it a control thing, or like what's scary about it? So,
yeah, I think if there are a lot of people that follow an aspect of Elon Musk's fear as well. He has a fear, okay, and his fear is that the humans who are designing these and programming these are trying to get them to think for themselves, okay, and trying to get them to have some sort of I don't want to use the human word, But anyway, they don't want them to take over the world. Okay.
Yeah.
And they feel that some people who are designing and programming these are youngsters who are actually not interested in worrying about those sort of things. They want to be the first and the most famous, and so they're putting everything into these AIs that becomes available, and those robots could become aggressive. It could be dormant for a long time, but they could be. And so there is reason for your son to be fearful, I think. But at the same time, you can see the tremendous advantages. Like we've been speaking in this conversation now, maybe I could use it in a way to write my book, to get the information that is really answering the questions why.
Well, as a research tool, it would be invaluable.
Yeah. Maybe I call my book Why.
Yeah, well, why not? The Plumstead methodology, So,
yeah. Anyway, probably a good place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. So you're keeping well?
Yeah. I'm sleeping a lot better. My health. Tomorrow is my 3 months up. I've got to go for a blood test tomorrow.
One of the things that my son, because he'd been struggling with his health, like thyroid issues and stuff like that, quite severe in many respects. But he said to me the other night there, he said, I've been drinking a glass of coconut water every morning when I get up. And he said, and I've never felt so good. He said, I sleep uninterrupted every night. I feel vital. I feel alive. All that fatigue that was haunting me is gone. And he puts it down to this big glass of coconut water that he drinks every morning, first thing.
Yeah, and he could be right. Coconut does have some really good effects on the thyroid. Yeah, I've had quite a lot of experience because my twin daughters have got thyroid problems. They were born with thyroid problems. But it's so difficult with with dad giving advice. What does dad know? So you've got to try and be subtle. Yeah.
Okay then.
Yeah.
Well, you take care. I hope you have a good week ahead, and I'll look forward to talking to you next week.
Yeah, you have a good week too, and I think you should get fewer days at your physical work.
Okay.
Yeah, even if it's one day, try and get 1 day a week, maybe on a Wednesday. Because you work Saturdays as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sunday and Wednesday or something. The days you have off. I think your soul needs it. I think. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to my break anyway, so
yeah,
that will be good. It will be good.
It would be.
Okay then.
Sure.
Talk to you next week.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay then. See you now.
Bye.
Bye.